Hey Bremerton, Josh Farley with the Kitsaps here. We know we're in the throes of a housing crisis. What can be done to alleviate this pain? That's the subject of this special edition of the Bremerton Beat Blast. Stick with us. Welcome back to this edition of the Bremerton Beat Blast, sponsored by the Admiral Theater. Today, as the Seattle tech boom continues, the Navy and shipyard grows, and lots more people are moving to the Pacific Northwest, Bremerton finds itself with a pretty simple problem. Too many people moving in and not enough housing for them. The result is a surge in property values and rents alike, and that's putting a lot of people here in a position of losing their homes. For our first story, I want you to meet Heather Meier and her family of 5. They live in about a 1,000 square foot apartment at Parkwood Terrace in East Bremerton. Heather found out in late December that her rent would be going up by about $400 when you include utilities. And in only 1 month's time, she's faced with a critical decision. The family could become homeless if they do not find alternative housing.
Hi, Josh. Come on in.
Thank you.
Welcome to my home. I can't afford to do this. I am a mother of 5 boys. Troy is 17, Steven's 15, Bryson's 12, and my twins are 11. I work full-time at an auto parts store. I'm a manager there. Yeah. And we make the best that we do. I sleep in the living room so that each of my kids have their room and have the privacy that they need. This could possibly make my family homeless. Trying to find another home in the school district so that I can keep my kids in their schools is extremely difficult right now. Not in a position to buy a house. All the housing programs like Section 8 are all closed or full right now. But now it's a matter of trying to find somewhere that will rent to me, a single mom, at a price that I can afford to pay.
We all know stories like the one that Heather's family faces. We also know that the private sector is planning to respond to this surge by building about 2,500 new units of housing in Bremerton and its surrounding areas. But for now, people are stuck in limbo. So what can our elected leaders do about the affordable housing crisis here in Kitsap County? To help me answer that question, I'm joined by Souter, our Environment and Social Services reporter at the Kitsaps, who's written extensively on this issue. Hello, Tad.
Hey, Josh.
So are there mechanisms, are there tools that local governments around the state of Washington have tried that perhaps Bremerton could consider?
I think there's some long-term fixes that governments are looking at that are going to take years. But there are also some stopgap measures that local governments have taken just to kind of soften the blow of the housing crunch. And some examples of those might be the city of Vancouver has enacted ordinances that require longer notice if there's going to be a significant increase in rent, or longer notice if they need people to vacate. Some local governments, including Vancouver, Seattle, and other places, have enacted ordinances that say that they can't discriminate based on the type of income that you have. And so if you have a rental voucher, they have to treat that like regular income from a job when they're considering your application. There are jurisdictions in the state, several counties, cities have passed housing levies that create a revenue stream to support affordable housing. And nothing is going to fix the problem, because the problem really has to do with supply and demand, and there's a lot of demand, and at the moment not enough supply, especially in the ranges that would serve the lower income folks. And so until we address the supply issue or demand tapers, we're not going to see the problem fixed.
So how can our local governments best put the builders who are building the housing in the best position to cut through the red tape and get to work quickly? That's the mission of new Bremerton Mayor Greg Wheeler, who believes that he can develop a tool that will infill development, whether it's changing zoning or just making it easier for a developer to erect housing in this dire time.
That's my approach right now as mayor, is to, how are we doing business, and then removing every obstacle. There's something I'm working with our staff on, and it's developing an infill development toolkit. What this will do is it'll allow, for one thing, it'll allow staff some authority, the director some authority to make some decisions on the spot. Things that might reduce costs help development. If you remove a month or 2 off of a process, and you do it enough times, you're talking real money, and so we get what we have in the pipeline moves out faster, we'll attract more development.
One agency particularly well-versed in helping with the housing crunch is the Bremerton Housing Authority, which has single-handedly torn down the old West Park development and erected a new mixed-use development while also putting affordable housing projects all over Bremerton. Executive Director Curt Wiese is also short, however, on funding mechanisms that can make more affordable housing possible. But the Housing Authority is hopeful they can create a new kind of supportive housing that can help the people hurt most by this housing crunch.
Where the Housing Authority and other community partners are focused right now is looking at permanent supportive housing for the chronic homeless population. And this is something that will be very expensive, but it's something that doesn't currently exist in the community right now. It's a huge gap. And if we can bring stability into someone's life through just basic shelter and provide on-site services that address mental illnesses that are untreated, chronic addictions and other chronic conditions, and change the downward spiral in someone's life and bring them back into productivity and a thriving life, then we've done good in their life, we've done good for the community and a better use of our limited resources.
But there's also a movement afoot to build small residences called tiny homes. The only challenge, says Kitsap County Commissioner Charlotte Greedo, is where to put them.
I see the dire need in the community and the understanding that we actually do have solutions, and we've talked about those solutions. We have a continuum of care. We have a plan for how to address homelessness in Kitsap County. So why not put those plans and wishes into action? Establishing tiny houses in a village format brings them together with other people who are on the same journey. I'm thinking of a dozen, some of them are much larger than that, a dozen at a time, so that people are working together. And yes, I do see several of them. Each of the other commissioners has agreed that they'd like to see some in Central Kitsap and North Kitsap as well as South Kitsap.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Bremerton Beat Blast. I hope you've learned a lot about our housing crisis and what can be done about it. We'll see you again next week. Music for this week's Bremerton Beat Blast was performed by the Union River Band, whose song Between Two Worlds was featured. You can see them live yourself at 6 p.m. January 26th at the Brownsville Deli.